in Accra. Here are some of my first impressions and reactions. First and foremost, very calming feeling I got just coming in and seeing all the black faces, right? Even though I'm African American, and I think that's a product of white supremacy and making me a hyphenated being, I felt so much sense of home and belonging, even though I'm not very familiar with the culture. It means something when you get to see all black everywhere. You get to see black joy, black happiness, black community. Juxtapose that next to that sense of how do I say this, like hyper consciousness in America. Right? That's not to say that I feel like a victim in America per se, but it's just different. It's just a different state of being. I don't have this sense of American exceptionalism or American arrogance about me where when I walk into a space, all attention should be on me, right? If anything, I've been really well received by the folks here in Ghana. And there's some things I love about the culture thus far. Greeting everybody with a smile, and everybody's being so welcoming. And sure, some of you can argue that's part of the tourism and a part of the way to kind of get you ingratiated. But I really felt a sense of genuine connection to the folks, even though I've only been there for maybe a day or so. I'm looking at my notes, by the way, if you see me look down. I've been very curious as I've just been walking around and seeing the sights. I'm not that far from the major airport, so I haven't really gotten to the city just yet. I hope to do that today. Yeah, just seeing the black symbols, the imagery, just wondering what the history is, right? So if anything, thus far, I just feel like I need to read more, I need to study more, just to learn more about not only African American history in the States, but also African history, because it's all connected, right? And I want to see our history as more than just a response to colonization and whiteness and European colonialism and imperialism. I want to see it beyond that, right? Learning about the traditions, the customs, and you can see that in people's names, in their regions where they're from, in certain parts of the city, right? Like we learned about 8 or 9 different ethnicities, right? Which I know for some of you may be thinking, but aren't they all African? But there's different ethnic, different culture, different dialects, just like in the States, similarly, right? One of the small stories I'll tell you, we were out at dinner in the hotel downstairs, and a black guy a Ghanaian saw my shirt that said Black History, and he said, "Brother, what does that mean to you?" And I paused, not in confusion, but just in a pensive kind of manner, like, okay, how do I explain that? Right? I said, well, Black history in the States it's history of black folks in America. And I said, I'll be honest with you, I don't feel like I learned enough about African history in my K through 12 experience as well as my college experience. And I studied African American studies. And granted, no major is going to tell me everything. If anything, I got the tools on how to go out and examine blackness in the world. And I give credit to my African American Studies department at Stanford University. But as I was talking to him, I said, it's unfortunate that there's this rift and this misconception of one another, and almost this distrust of one another as far as African folks and African Americans in the States. And he said, man, when you're here, we're all one, and you can't repeat that. And I really felt that. I said, it's unfortunate that when I go back to my home in the States, that there's a hope to be one. However, there's reality that there is this tension between each other based on, class, based on levels of education, based on region. And the irony is, like, just because you go to a predominantly white school, you live in neighborhoods that white people have taken over and, renovated or sucked the resources out of, here we are fighting and having this intergroup fighting. Yeah, so it was really interesting talking to him, and I just tried to let him know that, like, I hope that we continue to learn about each other's history. And I said, I think that's more incumbent upon me And, I thanked him for just spending that 5 or 6 minutes talking to me downstairs during dinner. Yeah, he was really conscious of the fact. He was like, doesn't this feel like not a misnomer, but is there a little bit of, I think maybe cognitive dissonance around like Black history? And I'm just trying to articulate to him, there's a history in the States, there's a history in the world, history in Africa. It's all connected, but we shouldn't allow these European and white powers to divide us. And that's always been a sentiment, I think, among a lot of the leaders in Africa, to be united as one, given that people are from different tribes, different ethnicities. And there's a real sense of ethnic and cultural pride in Africa that is different than America, right? America is so divided and there's so many polarizing points of view. And he said, this is the guy talking to me last night, he's like, even if we disagree on something, we're still one people. And I really felt that. I know that seems really like wishful thinking, but if that's how you operate in the world, and you're that closer to seeing that goal realized, right? If I came in thinking that we're against each other, then I'll only be able to see when we are, against each other, right? So it was a really eye-opening, edifying conversation to have with that young Black dude, maybe in his 20s, Other things that have stuck out to me, like I said before, I just need to step up my African scholarship as well as my African American scholarship, and just reading more. I don't know if I told you this, but he mentioned the Trump shooting. He said, "What's going on in America, man? Why are things so violent? Things so disjointed?" And I said, "This is kind of the state we're in, right? I know we're called the United States of America, but the way politics work, we only quote unquote unite when we have a common enemy, or we create a villain, an international villain overseas, and even then we're not united, because that vilification comes right back to Black and brown folks in the States, or we get victimized, villainized, and blamed for something, or we just get excluded and left out and ostracized from any, I guess, American gain. What does that even mean, right?" Yeah, so I also talked to him about like the military complex we have in the States, and how he was saying that, if we had the infrastructure like y'all in America, I go, well, you gotta understand, our infrastructure is based on taking infrastructure from other people and colonizing people and starting wars. And he said, true point, good point. So that's not to say that, I'm privileged, and I wanted to also highlight that, like, I'm privileged to be in the States in some ways. We'll say economically privileged. However, culturally, I still have a lot to learn and a lot to gain, and there's a lot of things I want to know. And I think this trip speaks to that idea of like willing and wanting to know more about who I am as a person. So for me as a Black male educator, this is the big so what. Why am I here? I'm just trying to understand what it's like to be a Black man, a Black male educator in a Black classroom. Right? I don't think I've ever taught in a classroom that was predominantly Black. I've taught in classes that are predominantly Latinx. I've taught in classes that are predominantly white, or some classes have been a little more heterogeneous as opposed to homogeneous. So, I'm really curious about what does it feel like? Like, what does the self-esteem feel like to be a Black person teaching your folks, right? And I know I'm on the opposite of that, being a Black African-American teaching in a predominantly white school. And so I wouldn't say there's a longing for that, but there's definitely some curiosities around how they build community here and how outside community informs what happens in the classroom, right? I feel like in the States, no matter where you go, I guess, period, in the world, students bring in their full identities, their full personas, their full issues into a classroom. And my job is not to solve that. My job is to support and maybe offer some tools and resources, whether it be people, some books, some thoughts, and just how to understand the world, right? And I'm curious about how they do that in Ghana. And so that's why I'm here as a teacher, a fulbright fellow. So if you want to follow me, you can follow me at The Other English Teacher on YouTube, at The Other English Teacher on IG, my blog, got some merch, justblackthoughts.com, so you can follow me there. This is just one of many blogs just to let you know what the experience has been like in Ghana so far. All right, and if you want to see the back, I don't know if you can see it. If you can see it, it's in solidarity, wherever you feel it. And shout outs to the guy at the bar. Shout outs to Gideon, which I'll tell you more about. He's been our host and our ambassador thus far. But solidarity, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting here. So thank you for listening in. Thanks. Hey, it's D. White, founder of justblackthoughts.com. If you haven't done so, hit subscribe on YouTube. Follow me at The Other English Teacher on Instagram and YouTube. Peace.